July 14th, 1943, Villalba, Sicily. A fascist police captain named Vincenzo Ancona was found dead at the bottom of a stone staircase outside the church of San Francesco. His neck was broken. The local priest told investigators it was an accident. The man had been drinking. He slipped on the wet stones after evening mass. But the priest was lying. Every villager who passed the body knew it. The bruises on Ancona's throat were not from a fall. Someone had strangled him first, then staged the scene. And this was not the only body. In the past 2 weeks, 7 fascist officials across western Sicily had died in similar accidents. Heart attacks, drownings, falls from horses, robberies gone wrong. The fascist government in Palermo was panicking. They did not understand what was happening, but one man did. Calo Vizzini, Don Calo, the most powerful mafia boss in Sicily. And 1 year earlier, he had received orders from America to begin this purge. This is how it started. January 12th, 1942. 300 miles off the coast of Virginia, a German submarine fired 2 torpedoes into the hull of an American oil tanker, named the Alan Jackson. The ship carried 73,000 barrels of crude oil. It exploded in a fireball visible from shore. 22 crew members burned alive in the water. 13 survived. One of them was a 24-year-old able seaman named Robert Jarvis from Brooklyn. Jarvis floated in the Atlantic for 11 hours before a rescue boat found him. Both his hands were burned black. He kept screaming one name: Mary, his wife, 3 months pregnant. When they brought him to a naval hospital in Norfolk, he was still screaming it. This was not an isolated attack. In the first 6 months of 1942, German U-boats sank 397 ships in the western Atlantic. 171 of those ships went down within sight of the American East Coast. New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts, Florida. The submarines hunted at night, silhouetted against the glow of coastal cities that refused to black out their lights. It was a slaughter. Sailors called it the second happy time. The Germans called it the American turkey shoot. But the submarines were not the only problem. The ships were being sabotaged before they even left port. Cargo holds flooded, engine parts stolen, fuel contaminated. Fires breaking out in warehouses filled with military supplies. Naval Intelligence knew someone on the docks was feeding information to German agents. They knew the longshoremen unions were involved. They knew organized crime controlled those unions. And they knew they could not penetrate that world without help from inside. February 9, 1942. The SS Normandy, the largest and most luxurious ocean liner ever built, was being converted into a troop transport at Pier 88 in Manhattan. At 2:30 in the afternoon, a fire broke out. Within hours, the ship capsized in the Hudson River. Officially, it was an accident caused by a welder's spark igniting life preservers. But rumors spread instantly. Sabotage. Axis agents. A message from Berlin. President Roosevelt was told that most New Yorkers, from shipping executives to subway workers, believed the Germans had destroyed the Normandy. The panic was real. The threat was real. And Naval Intelligence had no way to stop it. Lieutenant Commander Charles Radcliffe Haffenden sat in his office at 50 Church Street in Lower Manhattan. He was the head of the 3rd Naval District Intelligence Office, 38 years old, career officer, and completely out of options. His investigators could not get information from the docks. The longshoremen would not talk. The union leaders would not cooperate. Every lead hit a wall of silence. Haffenden knew who controlled that silence. One man. A man currently sitting in the coldest prison in America, serving 30 to 50 years for running a prostitution ring. Charles Luciano. Lucky Luciano. The man who organized the American Mafia into a national corporation. The man who controlled every major port from Boston to Baltimore. The idea was insane. Approach a convicted felon. Offer him a deal. Use the Mafia to protect America from Nazi saboteurs. If this leaked, it would destroy careers. It would humiliate the government. But Haffenden had photographs on his desk of men like Robert Jarvis, pulled from burning oil slicks, screaming for their wives. He made the call. March 1942. Clinton Correctional Facility, Dannemora, New York. They called it Siberia. 20 miles from the Canadian border. Winter temperatures dropped to 30 below zero. The stone walls were 4 feet thick. Prisoners said you could feel the cold through your bones even in summer. Cell 103, Block C. Prisoner 92168. Charles Luciano, 44 years old. 9 years into his sentence. 9 years of appeals that went nowhere because the prosecutor who put him away, Thomas Dewey, was now the governor of New York and would never let him out. A guard told Luciano he had a visitor, a lawyer. But when Luciano entered the meeting room, the man waiting was not a lawyer. He was wearing a naval uniform, no insignia, no name tag, just a plain officer's jacket. The meeting lasted 2 hours. No stenographer, no recording, no prison log entry. What we know comes from declassified Office of Naval Intelligence reports written years later and statements from participants given before they died. Haffenden did not ask directly. Men like him understood you do not make requests to men like Luciano. You present problems. You let them offer solutions, the sabotage, the U-boats, the sinkings, the men burning in the water. The government could not stop it. The docks were locked down tight. Nobody talked. Nobody cooperated. And meanwhile, American sailors kept dying. Luciano listened. Then he asked one question. What do I get? Haffenden had no authority to make promises, but he said he would take proposals to his superiors. Better prison conditions, visitation rights, and after the war, commutation of sentence and deportation to Italy. Luciano said the sabotage would stop, the docks would cooperate, information would flow to Naval Intelligence. He would give them the waterfront. 3 weeks later, Lucky Luciano was transferred from Dannemora to Great Meadow Correctional Facility near Comstock. Warmer, easier. Visitors started arriving. Meyer Lansky, Frank Costello, Albert Anastasia, men in expensive suits having business meetings in a prison conference room authorized by the United States Navy. The sabotage stopped. The fires stopped. The information leaks stopped. Ships started making it safely across the Atlantic. Haffenden had his miracle. But the officer understood something that terrified him. He had seen how fast the docks fell in line after one word from Luciano. He had seen the total, absolute control organized crime had over New York. And he realized the United States government had just made a deal with a power structure more effective than its own. June 1942. Haffenden returned to Great Meadow, this time with a different proposal. Operation Torch was being planned. The invasion of North Africa. Then the next target, Italy. And the key to Italy was Sicily. Luciano was born there. Lercara Fritti, a village near Palermo. He came to New York in 1906 as Salvatore Lucania, age 9, but he never lost his connections. And he told Haffenden something the Navy did not know. Mussolini had declared war on the Sicilian Mafia in 1924. The dictator felt insulted by a mafia boss named Francesco Cuccia, who told him he did not need police protection in Sicily because Cuccia's presence was enough. Mussolini was humiliated. He sent Cesare Mori, the Iron Prefect, with unlimited power. Mori arrested over 11,000 people. He tortured suspects with beatings, starvation, electric shocks. He burned villages. He arrested entire families, including women and children, to pressure mafia members into confessing. Mussolini boasted that he had destroyed the mafia, eradicated it, wiped it from Sicily. But you cannot kill something that lives in blood and tradition. The mafia went underground. They waited. They remembered every name, every face, every man who tortured them. And now, Luciano said, they could be activated. Haffenden brought this to his superiors. Captain Roscoe McFall, Rear Admiral Carl Esp. The proposal was insane. The United States Navy funding organized crime to prepare an invasion, giving criminals a list of people to kill. If this leaked, the scandal would end careers and destroy the administration. But Sicily was a strategic nightmare. Rugged mountains, fortified beaches, a hostile population, almost zero intelligence. The invasion could become a bloodbath. They approved Operation Underworld, classified at the highest level. So secret that General Dwight Eisenhower, commanding Operation Husky, as the Sicily invasion was coded, was never told the details. Luciano gave them a name: Calo Vizzini, Don Calo, the most powerful mafia boss still operating in Sicily, based in Villalba, in the center of the island, 62 years old, controlled water, sulfur mines, grain trade, a man who could move thousands with one word. Meyer Lansky organized the communications network, using Sicilian immigrants in New York and New Jersey. Letters coded and hidden in packages sent through neutral countries. Switzerland, Portugal, Spain, from family to family. Old mafia networks reactivated. The messages were simple. The Americans are coming. Prepare the ground, make lists. Fascist officials, police commanders, black shirt officers, Avra secret police, anyone loyal to Mussolini who could organize resistance. By autumn 1942, confirmation came back through the network. Don Calo received the messages. He was ready. But he needed time. The invasion was set for July 1943. That gave him 8 months to prepare the purge. In Great Meadow Prison, Lucky Luciano played cards and read newspapers. To anyone watching, just another aging gangster doing his time. But in reality, he was commanding an army, an invisible army preparing to go to war. May 1943. A final meeting. Meyer Lansky visited Luciano. 3 hours. No record. When Lansky left, he carried a sealed envelope, photographed, reduced to microfilm, smuggled to Palermo through a Portuguese freighter captain who owed money to the syndicate. One sentence in Sicilian dialect: "O tempo venuto, fatilu." The time has come. Do it. June 10th, 1943. Villalba. Don Calo Vizzini gathered his caporegimes. 12 men. Each controlled territory across Sicily. He spread a map on the table. Red marks indicated targets. 63 names. The purge would begin in 1 week. These were not random targets. These were personal. Men who arrested mafiosi. Men who tortured them. Men who burned their villages. Men who worked for Cesare Mori. 20 years of scores to settle. The fascist government had no idea what was coming. Mussolini's police state was about to be gutted from inside. 1 month before the Allied invasion, the Mafia went hunting. March 18, 1931, Palermo Central Police Station, basement interrogation room. A man named Giuseppe Genco sat strapped to a wooden chair. His hands were tied behind him. His face was swollen. Blood ran from his nose. 2 OVRA agents stood over him with rubber truncheons. They had arrested him 4 days earlier. No warrant, no charges, just suspicion. Someone told them he was connected to the Mafia. Someone always told them. The OVRA kept files on 130,000 suspected subversives in Italy. They organized 20,000 raids every week by 1930. The network had approximately 100,000 informants. One of the agents asked Giuseppe where Don Calo Vizzini was hiding. Giuseppe said he did not know anyone by that name. The agent hit him across the mouth with the truncheon. 3 teeth broke. Giuseppe spat blood on the floor. They brought in his wife, Maria, 31 years old, pregnant. They made Giuseppe watch while they slapped her. They threatened to take his 2 sons, put them in an orphanage, tell the boys their father was a criminal, a traitor to the fascist state. Giuseppe told them nothing, not because he was brave, because if he talked to the OVRA, the Mafia would kill his entire family. Better to take the beating, better to go to prison, better to die here than face what the Mafia did to informants. This was how Cesare Mori destroyed the Sicilian Mafia, through terror, through humiliation, through breaking families. Mori arrested over 11,000 people during his campaign from 1924 to 1929. He tortured suspects with beatings and starvation. He took entire families hostage to force confessions. He confiscated property. He publicly slaughtered livestock to humiliate Mafia members. And it worked. By 1929, Mussolini declared the Mafia defeated, destroyed, erased from Sicily. But men like Giuseppe Genco remembered. They remembered the names, the faces, the men who beat them, the men who arrested their families, the OVRA agents who smiled while they tortured. And 12 years later, when Don Calo Vizzini received word from America that the invasion was coming, those names became a list of the dead. June 1943, Villalba, a small town in the center of Sicily, population 3,000, surrounded by wheat fields and sulfur mines. This was Don Calo's kingdom. Calogero Vizzini was 66 years old, short, stocky, always wore a black suit and a fedora, spoke in a quiet voice, never raised it, never needed to. He controlled the water supply for half the island. He controlled the sulfur trade. He controlled the grain shipments. He was the intermediary between landowners and peasants, between the church and the criminals, between the living and the dead. On June 12, 1943, there was a wedding in Villalba, the son of a local farmer marrying the daughter of a shepherd. The entire town came to the celebration. Tables set up in the piazza, wine, bread, music. Don Calo sat at the head table, smiling, shaking hands, kissing the bride. But throughout the evening, men approached him, one by one. They bent down, whispered in his ear. He nodded, made small gestures with his hands. To anyone watching, it looked like a grandfather receiving birthday wishes from his grandchildren. In reality, he was distributing death sentences. 12 men. His capo regimes. Each controlled a zone of western and central Sicily, Palermo, Trapani, Agrigento, Caltanissetta, Enna. Each had compiled lists over the past 6 months, fascist officials, police commanders, carabinieri officers, OVRA informants, black-shirt militia leaders, men who worked for Cesare Mori, men who arrested mafiosi, men who testified in trials, men who humiliated them. The lists were detailed. Names, addresses, daily routines, where they ate breakfast, where they drank coffee, what roads they traveled, what time they went to bed, which churches they attended, who their wives were, who their mistresses were, where they were vulnerable. Don Calo had decided on the method. No public executions, no obvious murders, nothing that would trigger martial law and bring more troops to the island before the invasion. These had to look natural. Accidents, illnesses, suicides, robberies, random violence, spread out over 4 weeks. Make it look like a crime wave, not a coordinated purge. The targets were divided into 3 categories: high value, medium value, low value. High-value targets were prefects, police chiefs, over-commanders, men whose deaths would paralyze the administrative structure. Medium value were captains, lieutenants, local fascist party secretaries, men who could coordinate resistance in their towns. Low value were informants, the rats, the men who whispered names to the oeuvre for money. The first target was chosen carefully. A message, a man everyone would recognize. Vincenzo Spadaro, Chief Inspector of the Provincial Police in Caltanissetta, 53 years old. Worked directly for Cesare Mori from 1926 to 1928. Personally arrested 47 Mafia members. Personally beat at least 12 during interrogations. A man the Mafia hated more than almost anyone still alive. Spadaro lived in a small villa outside Caltanissetta. He drove the same route to work every morning. Left at 7:15. Stopped at a cafe. On Via Roma for espresso. Arrived at the police station by 8. On June 19, 1943, Spadaro's car did not arrive at the station. At 9:30, officers went to his villa. They found him in his bedroom. Dead. Foam around his mouth. Eyes wide open. The doctor said heart attack. Natural causes. 53 was not that old, but stress could kill a man. The Mafia had poisoned his coffee. Cyanide mixed into the sugar bowl at the cafe. The owner was a cousin of a man Spadaro had arrested in 1927. The owner poured the coffee himself that morning. Made sure Spadaro used 3 spoons of sugar, like always. Then watched him drink it, leave, drive home, and die 30 minutes later. Nobody suspected murder. Nobody investigated. The funeral was the next day. Small. Quiet. His wife cried. His colleagues came. They said nice things about him. And Don Calo, 200 miles away in Villalba, crossed off the first name on his list. 3 days later. Trapani, western coast of Sicily. A carabinieri captain named Antonio Ricci was inspecting coastal defenses. He was walking along a cliff overlooking the sea. His sergeant walked 10 feet behind him. The path was narrow. Limestone rocks on both sides. 100-foot drop to the water below. Ricci stopped to look through binoculars at a fishing boat. He wanted to make sure it was not smuggling weapons or spies. The sergeant stepped forward, put both hands on Ricci's back, pushed hard. Ricci went over the edge, arms flailing, screaming. He hit rocks halfway down, then splashed into the water. The body washed up 3 hours later. Broken neck, shattered ribs, skull fractured. The sergeant reported it as an accident. The captain lost his footing, slipped on loose gravel. Tragic. The sergeant had tried to grab him but could not reach in time. The sergeant's name was Paolo Messina. His brother had been arrested by Captain Ricci in 1929 on suspicion of Mafia membership. The brother died in prison 6 months later. Officially, pneumonia. Unofficially, beaten to death. Paolo Messina had waited 14 years for this moment. When Don Calo sent word through the network, Paolo volunteered immediately. The next target was harder. Giuseppe Caruso, Ovra agent in Agrigento, 41 years old. Paranoid. Always traveled with 2 bodyguards. Changed his route every day. Slept in different houses. Trusted nobody. But Caruso had a weakness. A mistress. 26-year-old woman named Francesca, who worked in a dress shop. Caruso visited her every Thursday night. Always the same time, 10 o'clock. He would dismiss his bodyguards and go to her apartment alone. He wanted privacy. On June 28th, Caruso arrived at Francesca's building at 10 o'clock, climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, knocked on her door. She opened it, smiled, let him inside. 3 men were waiting in the bedroom. They had been there since 8 o'clock. Francesca's brother was one of them. The Ovra had arrested their father in 1932. He never came home. They never found his body. They held Caruso down, put a pillow over his face, suffocated him. It took 4 minutes. When he stopped moving, they dressed him, sat him in a chair, put a pistol in his hand, fired 1 shot into his temple. Suicide. The note they left, forged in Caruso's handwriting, said he could no longer live with the guilt of what he had done for the regime. Depression. Shame. The war going badly. It was believable enough. Francesca screamed when the bodyguards came upstairs. She cried. She said she had no idea. He seemed fine when he arrived. He went into the bedroom. She heard a gunshot. She ran in and found him dead. The bodyguards believed her. The police believed her. The Ovra believed her. Another name crossed off the list. By early July, the pattern was impossible to ignore. 17 fascist officials dead in 3 weeks. Heart attacks, falls, suicides, robberies, car accidents, drownings. The fascist government in Palermo was panicking. They demanded investigations. They sent more Ovra agents to the countryside. They increased security. But it was too late. The administrative structure was collapsing. Police stations lost their commanders. Town governments lost their mayors and secretaries. Ovra networks lost their informants. And nobody knew who would die next. Fear spread through the fascist apparatus. Officials stopped going to work. Some fled to the eastern part of the island, away from mafia territory. Some resigned. Some just disappeared. On July 8th, 2 days before the Allied invasion, Don Calo held a final meeting in Villalba. His 12 caporegimes reported. 43 targets eliminated, 12 more wounded or incapacitated. 8 fled the island entirely. Western Sicily was decapitated. The men who could have coordinated defense were dead or running. Don Calo looked at his map. Red crosses marked the dead. Black circles marked the wounded. Blue marks showed where officials had fled. The western half of Sicily looked like a battlefield. But no shots had been fired, no troops deployed, just silent, invisible strikes. One by one, night after night. He folded the map, lit a cigarette, looked at his men and said one sentence. When the Americans land, we greet them as friends. On July 10, 1943, at 02:45 hours, American and British forces landed on the beaches of Sicily. Operation Husky, 160,000 troops, 3,000 ships, 4,000 aircraft. In the western sector, the towns surrendered without a fight. In the eastern sector, where the Mafia did not operate, the Germans and Italians fought for every inch. Thousands died. The difference was Don Calo's map, the map of death. The men who could have organized resistance were already in the ground July 8, 1943. 2 days before the invasion, Palermo, the prefect's palace, a Baroque building on Via Roma. Security was tight, black shirt guards at every entrance, carabinieri patrolling the courtyard, Ovra agents checking identification papers. Inside, Prefect Luigi Barletta sat at his desk reviewing reports. 59 years old. Appointed by Mussolini personally in 1938. A loyal fascist who believed completely in the regime. He had reports spread across his mahogany desk. Strange reports. Disturbing reports. 17 officials dead in 3 weeks. All across western Sicily, heart attacks, accidents, suicides. The pattern was impossible to ignore, but nobody could prove anything. No evidence, no witnesses, just bodies. Barletta had requested more troops from Rome, more OVRA agents, more security. But Rome was distracted. The Allies had conquered North Africa in May. Intelligence suggested an invasion was coming. Maybe Sardinia, maybe Corsica, maybe Sicily. Nobody knew for certain. Barletta's secretary knocked on the door. A visitor, Colonel Stefano Marchetti from the OVRA. Barletta waved him in. Marchetti was 46 years old, thin, nervous. He had been investigating the recent deaths. Marchetti sat down. He opened a folder. Inside were photographs. Dead men, officials, police officers, all from Western Sicily, all in the past month. "They are killing us," Marchetti said. "Systematically, one by one." Barletta asked who. Marchetti said the Mafia. But how could he prove it? There was no evidence, no witnesses. The deaths looked natural, accidental. Barletta stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the city. Palermo, beautiful, ancient, deadly. He said they would increase security, double the guards, restrict movement, arrest suspects, do whatever was necessary. But in his gut, Barletta knew the truth. They were losing control. The island was slipping away, and he had no idea how to stop it. That night, Prefect Barletta went home to his villa in the hills outside Palermo. His driver took the usual route. Security car in front, security car behind, black-shirt guards with submachine guns. At 9:45, the convoy passed through a small village called Monreale. The lead car slowed for a sharp turn. The prefect's car followed. The trailing security car was 20 meters behind. A teenage boy stepped into the road, waving his arms, shouting. The lead car stopped. Guards jumped out. What was the problem? The boy pointed at a building. Fire. Smoke coming from the windows. The guards ran toward it. Then the bombs went off. 2 grenades. One under the lead car, one under the prefect's car. The explosions were simultaneous. The lead car flipped onto its side. 4 guards killed instantly. The prefect's car was hit from behind. The driver died immediately. Barletta was thrown against the front seat. His spine fractured. The trailing security car stopped. Guards jumped out. Gunfire erupted from the buildings. Machine gun fire, rifles, pistols. The ambush was perfect. 8 men with weapons, firing from 4 different positions. The guards tried to return fire, but they were exposed. 3 were hit in the first 10 seconds. Men ran from the shadows. Pulled Prefect Barletta from the wreckage. He was screaming. His legs would not move. They dragged him into an alley. One man pulled out a knife, held it against Barletta's throat. "This is for Giuseppe Genco. This is for Mario Anzalone. This is for every man you sent to prison. Every man Cesare Mori tortured." Then he cut Barletta's throat, left to right. Deep. Blood sprayed across the cobblestones. Barletta choked, grabbed at his neck, died in 40 seconds. The attackers disappeared into the night. By the time reinforcements arrived, they were gone. 8 fascist guards, dead. The prefect of Palermo murdered. 2 days before the Allied invasion. The next morning, panic spread through the fascist government. If they could kill the prefect, they could kill anyone. Officials started fleeing. Some went to Messina on the eastern side of the island. Some tried to get boats to mainland Italy. Some just hid. July 9, 1943, one day before the invasion, Trapani, western coast, a black-shirt colonel named Domenico Russo was barricaded inside his headquarters. 20 guards, sandbags at the windows, machine guns on the roof. he was not taking chances. Russo was 51 years old, a veteran of the Ethiopian War, a committed fascist. He commanded 300 black-shirt militia in western Sicily. If the invasion came, his men would defend Trapani. But that afternoon, something strange happened. His telephone line went dead. Then the electricity cut out. Then water stopped flowing from the taps. Russo sent men to investigate. They found the telephone wires cut, the power lines sabotaged, the water pipes broken. Russo realized he was isolated, cut off. He ordered his men to prepare for attack. But the attack did not come. Not that night, not the next morning. Just silence. What Russo did not know was that every road leading to Trapani had been blocked, trees cut down, boulders rolled onto the highways, bridges damaged. The Mafia was not attacking him. They were trapping him, making sure when the Allies landed, he could not coordinate with other units, could not call for reinforcements, could not escape. On July 10th, when American troops landed on the beaches west of Trapani, Russo's garrison was still isolated. They fought for 6 hours, then surrendered. 300 blackshirts captured without inflicting significant casualties, because they had no support, no communication, no way to coordinate defense. The same pattern repeated across western Sicily. Officials dead or missing, communication lines cut, roads blocked, water supplies sabotaged, transport vehicles destroyed. Every piece of infrastructure that could have been used to organize resistance was crippled. July 10, 1943, 02:45 hours. Operation Husky began. 160,000 Allied troops, 3,000 ships, 4,000 aircraft. The largest amphibious invasion yet in World War II. The British 8th Army under Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery landed on the southeastern beaches near Syracuse. The American 7th Army under Lieutenant General George Patton landed on the southern and southwestern beaches near Gela and Licata. The British faced almost no resistance. The Italian coastal units were demoralized and poorly equipped. Syracuse fell in hours. Augusta fell the next day. The British pushed north toward Catania. The Americans faced heavier resistance initially. German panzers counterattacked at Gela. The Hermann Göring Division tried to push the Americans back into the sea. But American naval gunfire and air support destroyed the German attack. By July 12th, the beachhead was secure. The Allies controlled the southern coast of Sicily. Now came the race inland. Patton's 7th Army pushed west and north, toward Palermo, toward the heart of Mafia territory. And as they advanced, something strange happened. Towns surrendered without a fight. American soldiers entering villages in western Sicily found white flags hanging from windows. They found roads clear. They found wells and water supplies intact. They found guides waiting to lead them through the countryside. And some of them found something else. Yellow handkerchiefs tied to posts, yellow cloth hanging from balconies, yellow scarves waved by old men standing by the roadside. The soldiers did not know what it meant, but their intelligence officers did. The yellow cloth was a signal, a recognition code, sent through the network months earlier. From Lucky Luciano, through Meyer Lansky, through Don Calo Vizzini, to every Mafia family in western Sicily. It meant, these are friends. Help them. Not every American unit saw the yellow cloth. Not every town cooperated. The story has been exaggerated over the years. Some historians say it is mostly legend. But enough soldiers reported seeing yellow handkerchiefs or yellow flags that intelligence officers took note. Something was helping them in western Sicily. something the Germans and Fascists could not stop. By contrast, in eastern Sicily, the fighting was brutal. The Germans had concentrated their best units there: the Hermann Göring Division, the 15th Panzer Grenadier Division. They fought for every town, every bridge, every mountain pass. The British advance toward Catania stalled. Montgomery's forces were stopped by determined German resistance at the Simeto River and the plain of Catania. The Germans held the high ground. They had clear fields of fire. They inflicted heavy casualties. The contrast was stark. In the west, Patton's army raced forward, taking town after town. Palermo fell on July 22nd with almost no resistance. In the east, Montgomery's army crawled forward, losing men every day, not reaching Catania until August 5th. Why the difference? Terrain was part of it. German troop deployments were part of it. But something else was happening in the west. The administrative structure had collapsed. The officials who should have coordinated defense were dead or had fled. The police who should have enforced order were paralyzed. The informants who should have reported partisan activity were silent. The Mafia's purge had worked. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough to matter. On July 15th, American troops entering the town of Villalba were met by an elderly man in a black suit and fedora. He spoke no English, but he had an interpreter, a local school teacher who had lived in New York for 10 years. The old man introduced himself as Calo Vizzini. He offered to help the Americans. He knew the roads. He knew the towns. He knew who could be trusted and who could not. The American commander was a major named William Harding. He did not know who Don Calo was, but he accepted the offer. Why not? They needed guides. They needed local knowledge. Within days, Don Calo Vizzini was appointed mayor of Villalba by the Allied military government. Not officially, not permanently, but as a temporary administrator. Someone to maintain order while the real government was established. This pattern repeated across western Sicily. Mafia members appointed as mayors, as administrators, as police chiefs. The Allies needed people who spoke the language, who knew the territory, who could get things done. They did not realize they were handing power back to the very organization Mussolini had tried to destroy. By August 17, 1943, the Allies had conquered Sicily. It took 38 days, more than 24,000 Allied casualties. The Germans and Italians lost or captured over 160,000 men. But in western Sicily, where the Mafia operated, the conquest was faster and cheaper in lives. Because the groundwork had been laid, the targets eliminated, the infrastructure crippled. 43 men dead in 4 weeks, murdered by knives and poison in staged accidents, killed in the dark by men with long memories and old scores to settle. The price of victory. Paid in fascist blood. July 10th, 1943. 02:45 hours. Gala Beach, southern Sicily. The 1st American Rangers hit the sand running. Private First Class Angelo Rossi from Brooklyn climbed over the seawall, rifle ready. Behind him, landing craft engines roared as more troops poured ashore. Waves crashed, machine gun fire chattered from the cliffs above. German spotters screamed warnings into radios. Rossi expected hell, barbed wire, minefields, concrete bunkers. But what he found shocked him. An old fisherman in rags stood at the base of the seawall. No weapon, no uniform, just a yellow handkerchief tied to a stick. He waved it slowly, pointed inland, away from the cliffs, toward a dry riverbed. Rossi froze. The fisherman grabbed his arm, whispered in broken English, "No fight. Come." He led the squad through the riverbed. past an abandoned machine gun nest, past crates of ammunition left open in the sand, straight into the village behind the beach. By dawn, Gala was theirs. No casualties. Houses hung white sheets from windows. Villagers brought water and bread. Children ran up shouting, "Americani! Americani!" The fisherman disappeared into the crowd, his yellow handkerchief gone. 3 miles west. Licata Beach. Lieutenant John Murphy's platoon hit the water under mortar fire. Bullets whipped past. 2 men went down. Then Murphy saw it. A man on a mule cart at the edge of the dunes. Yellow cloth tied to the mule's ear. The man cracked a whip. Rode straight at the platoon. Murphy raised his Thompson. The man shouted, "Amico, L for Luciano!" He pointed to a faded chalk L on his cart, gestured wildly toward the village road, away from the German positions. Murphy lowered his weapon, followed. The road was clear, bridges intact, no mines. The village mayor waited at the church with keys to the town hall. "No Germans! They run last night," he said through an interpreter. Murphy's platoon took Licata in 20 minutes. Word spread up the chain of command. Yellow handkerchiefs, chalk L's, old men on donkeys, fishermen waving from rooftops. In western Sicily, American troops moved like they owned the place. Captain Frank Gleason commanded a company of the 1st Infantry Division near Agrigento. July 11th. His men pushed north through olive groves. Expected snipers, ambushes. Instead, they found farmhouses with plates of cheese and olives on tables outside, yellow scarves tied to fence posts. An old woman approached Gleason's jeep. No teeth, black dress. She handed him a basket of figs, pointed at a dirt track through the hills, drew an L in the dust on his hood. "Trapani, fast road," she said. Gleason followed. Saved his company 12 hours and 15 miles of mountain fighting. By noon, Agrigento fell. The fascist prefect was missing. Police chief dead in a car wreck 2 days earlier. Town hall empty, except for the mayor-elect. A man named Salvatore Giuliano's uncle. He wore a yellow armband. East Coast. Same night. British commandos assaulting Syracuse. No handkerchiefs. No L's. Italian coastal garrison fought back. 60 dead on both sides before surrender at dawn. Augusta next day. House to house. 50 British casualties. No locals helping. No guides. Just bullets. Catania Plain. Montgomery's tanks bogged down in vineyards. German 88mm guns zeroed in from Mount Etna. 400 British dead in 1 day. No white flags. No cheese platters. Patton saw the pattern immediately. West of a line from Gela to Palermo, Sicily welcomed Americans. East of that line, Germans fought like devils. He ordered his 7th Army west. Took Palermo July 22nd. Drove in convertibles down Via Roma while cheering crowds threw flowers. Montgomery crawled toward Catania. Reached it August 5th. Lost thousands. July 15th. Villalba Town Square. Don Calo Vizzini stood under the Allied flag. Black suit, fedora, gold watch chain. Beside him, Major William Harding, U.S. Army. Harding spoke no Italian. Don Calo spoke no English. The school teacher translated. "You help us. Town stay calm," Harding said. Don Calo nodded. "We keep order. We know people." Harding shrugged. Needed someone reliable. Germans, 5 miles north. No time for bureaucracy. By nightfall, Don Calo appointed 6 men as town council. All Kappa regimes. All from his network. They controlled food distribution, water, fuel, roads. Harding signed the orders. Called it practical. Same day. Corleone. 30 miles south. American lieutenant found the police station locked. New chief inside. Mafia soldier, named Michel Navarra. Yellow handkerchief in his desk drawer. Lieutenant needed roads cleared. Novara delivered. 50 trucks rolling by morning. Castelvetrano, Western Sicily. Town opens gates to Americans July 24th. Mayor-elect? Vito Di Bella. Mafia boss. Feeds Patton's advance guard pasta and wine. Yellow L painted on his front door. Amgot, Allied military government of occupied territories, formalized it. Colonel Charles Paletti appointed acting governor of Sicily July 25th. Paletti knew the score. New York prosecutor, dealt with Italians, knew Luciano by reputation. Paletti issued Order No. 3. Local mayors who cooperate with Allied forces will be confirmed in office. Translation: Mafia bosses. Keep power if they behave. By August 1st, 47 western Sicilian towns had mafia mayors. Men who ran numbers rackets now ran town halls. Extortionists collected taxes. Hitmen became police chiefs. Paletti called it stability. Locals called it business as usual. Back in Great Meadow Prison, New York. Lucky Luciano read the Palermo newspaper smuggled in by Meyer Lansky. Headlines screamed, "Sicily falls." Photos showed American flags over the prefect's palace. Luciano smiled. First time in 9 years, he was winning the war. From a prison cell, through an army of criminals, commanded by a man he'd never met, using methods nobody would ever admit. Washington got nervous. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover demanded answers. Naval Intelligence stonewalled. National security, they said. Truth was uglier. They had no plan for the aftermath. Sicily was theirs. Palermo celebrated with fireworks. Patton posed for photos with mayors in fedoras. Nobody mentioned yellow handkerchiefs in the official reports. But soldiers whispered. Fishermen with signals. Villages that knew too much. An invisible hand guiding them inland. The Mafia had delivered. 60-plus officials dead. Western Sicily paralyzed. Allies ashore with half the expected casualties. Payment due. And America just wrote the check. February 9th, 1946. Pier 7, Brooklyn Navy Yard. Freezing rain hammered the dock. A Liberty ship named the SS Laura Keene sat low in the water, steam hissing from its stacks. Federal marshals escorted one passenger up the gangway. Charles Luciano, prisoner 92168, now deportee. He wore a double-breasted suit, diamond ring, gold watch, manicured nails. One prison guard accompanied him from Sing Sing. No chains, no handcuffs. The governor's pardon cited invaluable service to the armed forces during the war. Thomas Dewey signed the commutation January 3rd, 1946. The same prosecutor who sent Luciano to prison 10 years earlier. Now governor. The statement was careful, vague. Luciano cooperated in such effort, though the actual value of the information procured is not clear. Translation: We used him. We won. Now we bury the evidence. Luciano served 9.5 years of a 30 to 50-year sentence. Released on condition of permanent exile. Banned from ever setting foot in America again. He boarded the ship, turned at the railing, looked back at the New York skyline, lit a cigarette. The Laura Keene sailed at dawn. He landed in Naples, February 28, 1946. Reporters swarmed. Photographers flashed bulbs. Luciano smiled. Said he was going home to retire. Quiet life. Family. Peace. He lied. Within 6 months, Federal Bureau of Narcotics agents tracked him to Paris, meeting with Corsican heroin suppliers. Within 2 years, he ran the French connection. Turkish morphine base refined in Marseille labs. Shipped to New York through Montreal. Hundreds of millions of dollars. The deal got Luciano deported. But it made him untouchable. Italian police had orders not to interfere. American authorities could not touch him on foreign soil. He lived free in Naples, drove a Mercedes, dated actresses, ran his empire by telephone, died January 26, 1962, heart attack at Naples Airport, 64 years old, buried at St. John's Cathedral Cemetery in Queens after his body was returned. Thousands attended, flowers from every mafia family in America. He won, completely, prison to exile to power, and nobody could admit it. Villalba, Sicily, September 16, 1944. Don Calo Vizzini sat on the steps of the town hall. His town hall. Mayor by appointment of Amgot. Black suit. Fedora. 67 years old. Flanked by 6 armed men. Communist organizer Girolamo Licauzi stood in the piazza giving a speech. Land reform, redistribution, justice for peasants. 300 people listened, cheering, clapping, waving red flags. Don Calo raised his hand, made a small gesture. His men opened fire, rifles, pistols. A hand grenade rolled across the cobblestones. Licauzi hit the ground. Shrapnel tore through his leg. 14 peasants wounded. 3 dead. Police investigated. Found nothing. No witnesses. No evidence. Don Calo said communist provocateurs started the fight. Case closed. This was the new Sicily. Mafia bosses appointed as mayors by Allied military government. 47 towns across western Sicily by September 1943. Men who ran protection rackets now collected taxes. Heroin smugglers controlled food distribution. Murderers became police chiefs. AM Goatee needed stability. Germans retreating north. Italy collapsing. Civil war brewing. Mafia delivered order. No riots. No strikes. Roads clear. Black markets functioning. Colonel Charles Paletti, military governor of Sicily, called them respectable citizens of impeccable manners, allowed them to bear arms, gave them liaison positions between military and civilian administration, put them in charge of supplies, transport, fuel, construction, perfect positions for corruption, building contracts, transport franchises, public works, all controlled by mafia families. The bargaining power of each boss measured by votes, he commanded. Deliver votes, get contracts. Deliver more votes, get more contracts. By 1948, Christian Democrats dominated Sicilian politics, backed by mafia muscle and American money. Don Calo delivered entire provinces. Villalba voted 98% Christian Democrat. Caltanissetta province, 87%. The system locked in. Politicians needed mafia votes. Mafia needed political protection. Cosa Nostra embedded in government structure. Would last 50 years. Don Calo died July 10, 1954. Exactly 11 years after the Allied invasion. Heart failure, 77 years old. State funeral in Villalba. Politicians, priests, generals attended. Newspapers called him humble man of honor and father of the people. His tombstone read, "His mafia was not criminal, but stood for respect of the law, defense of all rights, greatness of character. It was love." A lie carved in marble. The numbers. Conservative estimates from declassified documents and mafia historiography, 63 high-value fascist officials eliminated June-July 1943. 100-plus low-value targets, informants, witnesses, minor police. Western Sicily. Palermo fell July 22nd with minimal resistance. Allied casualties in the western sector, approximately 800 dead and wounded. Eastern Sicily. British forces fought for Catania until August 5th. Montgomery's 8th Army, 2,700 casualties. German and Italian defenders fought house to house. If Western Sicily had fought like the East, Allied casualties could have doubled. 10,000 more dead. 20,000 wounded. Mafia purge saved lives. Allied lives. At the cost of legitimizing organized crime. Strategic victory. Moral catastrophe. The legacy metastasized. Heroin pipeline from Sicily to America. French connection, 1950s, 1970s. Estimates. 70% of American heroin came through mafia channels. Tens of thousands dead from overdoses. Cities destroyed. Harlem, South Bronx, Detroit, Chicago. Mafia political control. First Mafia War 1962-1963. 68 bosses murdered fighting over Don Calo's empire. Second Mafia War 1981-1983. Over 1,000 murders. Judges. Politicians. Police. Civilians caught in crossfire. Judge Giovanni Falcone. Led Maxi trial 1986-1992. Convicted 475 mafiosi. May 23, 1992. Highway outside Palermo. 500 kilograms of explosives buried under the road. Falcone's car hit the crater. He died instantly. His wife died beside him. 3 bodyguards dead. Judge Paolo Borsellino. Falcone's partner. July 19, 1992. Car bomb outside his mother's apartment in Palermo. Borsellino and 5 bodyguards killed. 90 kilograms of Semtex. The blast destroyed 4 buildings. Sicily erupted. Riots in Palermo. Citizens marched against the mafia. Basta. Enough. But the structure remained. The deal made in 1943 had roots too deep to tear out. April 2, 1282, Easter Monday, Palermo, Church of the Holy Spirit. Vespers bell rang at sunset. A French soldier harassed a Sicilian woman outside the church. Her husband stabbed him. The crowd erupted. Sicilians killed every French person they could find. 2,000 dead by dawn. Sicilian Vespers. Revolution born in blood. French occupation ended. July 1943. 661 years later. Same island, same method. Different occupiers. Fascists replaced French. Americans replaced Sicilians. But the pattern held. Targeted killings. Systematic purge. Political revolution disguised as chaos. The mafia's night of the Sicilian Vespers. 43 officials dead in 4 weeks. Western Sicily decapitated. Allied invasion succeeds with minimal casualties. Mafia reborn as political force. History does not repeat. But it rhymes. Sicily remembers. Sicily waits. Always hungry. The question remains. Was the deal worth it? Thousands of Allied lives saved. Tens of thousands destroyed by heroin. Judges murdered. Democracy corrupted. Cosa Nostra embedded in government for 50 years. Naval Intelligence classified the files. Participants sworn to secrecy. Operation Underworld declassified 1977. Congressional hearings produced no prosecutions. Too many dead. Too many embarrassed. Too many still in power. The price was paid. Not by the men who made the deal. By Sicilian peasants gunned down in piazzas. By American addicts dying in tenements. By judges blown apart on highways. The bill came due. And it is still being paid.